What's your thoughts on government cover-ups or covert societies attempting to control humanity? Do you believe in ancient astronauts, intergalactic communication, or extraterrestrial visitations? Ever had an experience with disembodied spirits or the paranormal universe? Are these subjects fact or fiction? Each week, Tony and Eddie explore these unbelievable realities and beyond. Exclusively on Truth Be Told.
Welcome back to Truth Be Told with Tony and Eddie, where we believe in experience becomes truth. I'm your host, Tony Sweet. Joining me now in studio is world-renowned psychic and your other host, Eddie Connor.
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much, Tony. Guess who I'm excited to be introducing to you today?
Who that be?
Who that be? Our other co-host today is UBN radio host and famed astrologer Rachel Lang.
Love her!
Hey, you guys, you know what's always astounded me?
What's that?
Past lives and pre-birth experiences. It's such a unique idea, and it's fascinating if you think about it. But first, a word from our sponsors at echos.com.
Thank you for supporting Earth-Friendly Products. For over 40 years, Earth-Friendly Products have brought you the greenest home merchandise for all your family needs. Learn more at echos.com.
Eddie, getting back to past lives and pre-birth, our next guest is a pre-birth researcher. Elizabeth Carman is here with us to give us greater insight on what actually happens to us before we're born.
I love that, and sometimes even before that. And for those who will want more hands-on information from her, please go to CosmicCradle.com, where you can find out more about the captivating idea of spiritual dimensions of life before we're born. And make sure you check out her book, Cosmic Cradle. So let's please welcome to the show philosopher, psychologist, and author Elizabeth Carman.
Dr. Carman, how you doing?
I'm doing very well. Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here to explore this mystery about who we are and where we come from and what people are remembering about that naturally.
Wow,
who
what
are born with these memories.
And that's the way to start it right there. That's the way to start it. Well, we'll talk a little bit about how you got started in this field, because that's a very fascinating field. Because you hear multiple books and shows about afterlife and past lives, but we don't talk about pre-births.
Well, I'll try to make it short for you. In 1989, I took a graduate magazine writing class just for fun. I wasn't planning to do anything professionally with it. And I began to interview women with higher consciousness and who were experiencing insights into what is happening during pregnancy, conception, childbirth. Some of them were giving birth in ecstasy without pain, communicating with their babies when the babies were in the womb, telepathic communications, or receiving messages in dreams or visions, being aware of the moment of conception. Perhaps it happened when they were making love in the bedroom and a pillar of light came down over them. There's different awarenesses that they had. And also being aware of the incarnating soul communicating with them and coming in dreams and visions even before they were thinking of getting pregnant. So that was that triggered my interest when I started writing about this and interviewing these women and probing deeper and deeper, and then it led to not only this pre-birth communication takes place between the mother and the incarnating soul, but also pre-birth memory, people that are born with the natural memory. I'm not talking about past life now. Some of these people do have past life. I'm talking about memory of a spiritual state before they're even conceived. And also we stretch that now to even include once they're conceived in the womb and born, but it takes us back to that time when we are not identified with a physical body yet, people who have memories of that state of consciousness and where they were. So it's a vast area, and I never thought it would be more than one little book. And in 2000, we actually published our first book, which was 760 pages.
Oh,
Interviews, research on 365 cultures and religions. And the indigenous people were telling us about this and how actually they were ridiculed, condemned as primitive, that they didn't know what they were talking about. For example, in Australia, in order to have a child, the father had to have contact with the incoming spirit. They called it the spirit child. And the spirit child would come in a dream or would be a vision. Maybe he's out hunting or fishing, or he hears the voice of the child calling to him. In many different ways the connections were made. And the child would say, Father, Father, I want to come to you, and my name is such and such, and point out who's mother, and conversations like that. And, of course, the early European anthropologists said, well, these people don't understand conception and how babies come into the world. They don't even understand sex. My goodness, let's put them on a reservation and let them die in peace. They must be the most primitive people on the planet.
Yep.
So actually, they were way ahead of the Europeans because they understood, yes, they understood sex. There was no problem, but they were pointing out that unless there's a spirit child interested, willing to incarnate, doesn't matter how much sex they were going to have. So that was
I love
a very revolutionary thing for the anthropologists. They could not grok that.
Well,
they
couldn't
accept that.
that's
so
a
they
bad
just
pickup
said,
line
these
right
are
there.
the most primitive.
That's a bad pickup line at the bar saying, the spirit child told me to have sex with you to create.
Yeah, but they would afterwards they
Well,
would be
there
found
are
out.
stories like that.
Of course there
stories
are.
like that. We're writing a book we're in our third book right now. We've got two others after that in the wings because we're getting so much information worldwide right now. But we have one story coming up where they aren't even a dating couple, they're friends, and the woman has a dream where the child or the soul comes to her in a vision in the dream in the night and wants to incarnate and have her be the mother, and says so-and-so will be the father. And she calls the fellow the next day and relates the experience, and wouldn't you know it, the spirit child had already contacted him. Anyway, they did have a child together.
That's
but,
great.
These things can happen like this. It sounds amazing, but I've heard enough of it now that I don't question most of it.
Well, Dr. Carman, do you find that groups, whether it's indigenous tribes or whatever, communities where people are more connected to the earth, more connected to nature and the natural flow of things in an organic manner, have a tendency to be more higher conscious than people, let's say, in a 400 square foot studio apartment in New York City for 5 generations? Do you find that the people that are more connected to the natural rhythms of earth are more higher conscious than certain people?
Well, yes, I have to go back again to Australia because that is a continent larger than the United States with all kinds of different tribes. This is back when they were first discovered by the white man. And they interviewed all these different tribes and collected their what they believed about conception and pregnancy, and it was a widespread belief there. These were very these were people living as naturally as you can live, and they were highly psychic, highly intuitive. And there's many reports of other things besides their communication with the spirit child. And we also in North America have the indigenous people here who were interviewed also, and a lot of them were very leery of the white man, and
With
some of
good
them had
reason.
already foreseen in their visions what was coming, and they didn't want to share a lot. Some of them did, there were some successful researchers that were able to gather some of their memories, and we report those in our book. There were cases also where you had people, maybe like missionary types, who had a religious bent, and they looked at all of this stuff as just absolutely absurd, and wrote about it in that way. That this one says they remember being in the womb, and this one says, they related the experiences, but they ridiculed them, and these were in journal articles here in the United States.
I have to say, my niece, who's autistic, she's 10 years old. She actually remembers being in my sister's womb.
Wow.
Okay, that's beautiful.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'm wondering if you remember any of the details about what she said it was like, or if she remembered anything that happened in the outer world, anything that her mother did, or something that happened in her mother's life, because
I'll have to ask
some
her.
of them. Go ahead.
No, I'll have to ask her that because, yeah.
There are cases where, for example, one story that we have is a woman that was 7 months pregnant and had a serious car collision, and was pregnant at that 7 months pregnant in a car collision. And when her child was about 4 years old, he described the accident, and he said he came out through the mother's belly button. He looked out, and there was all this commotion and all that, and he said the ghosts, he said, he's just a 4-year-old boy. He said, the ghosts told me it's not time to be born yet and told me to go back inside.
Oh, wow.
But
wow.
he described the accident. No one had ever told this little boy about this accident.
Wow.
So that they can see. And what's interesting is the ultrasound technology today validates the consciousness of these babies in the womb. For example, during amniocentesis, where they'll take a needle to extract some amniotic fluid to do a test during the early part of the pregnancy. And this is when the baby's eyes are sealed shut. But the baby has been seen on the ultrasound screen batting against the needle or moving away from it. It realizes something's coming into its territory, and its eyes are not open, but psychically it's aware. This is not just a little lump of flesh growing in there that has no awareness. These are conscious sentient beings, and this is an important for doctors when they're delivering babies. There's a myth that babies don't remember anything until they're 3 years old. That comes to us from Freud. That's completely
wrong.
Invalidated by our research.
So what can...
go ahead.
I'm sorry, no. I was just going to follow up on that point. And what can parents do to kind of develop a relationship and make that pre-birth experience as joyful and as loving as possible for their babies?
Well, first of all, they need to realize that baby is fully conscious. It doesn't need a brain in order to have a memory or be aware. So recognizing that they can be communicating with the baby even before they get pregnant. And welcoming it and asking it, asking for a higher being to come in. Just interacting, just speaking as you would, and once they become pregnant, just having conversation just as you would have with any loved family member. Just welcoming it, we're looking forward to you, all those kinds of positive statements, affirmations that can be made, because some of these children may feel some reluctance.
Really.
People that remember being reluctant coming in. So we want to shower them with love, and that will make it a more positive experience during the pregnancy. So as much love as we can shower on the baby as it's developing in the womb, we can communicate with it. First of all, we have to realize it is a conscious being. So that's the first step.
And Dr. Carman, there was a time, whenever I was growing up, there was a time when people believed that as adults were getting closer to their twilight years and getting closer to passing away to the other side, and they just assumed that they were incoherent, that they had no idea what was really going on around them. And then they find out later. Now they talk about it more actively just because the person is there in almost a comatose state and they're still alive, but they're not responsive. They hear and feel and experience everything in the room around them. And it's sort of like the same thing with newborn babies. They don't remember anything for 2 or 3 years. But isn't it sort of like the entrance into the physical plane of existence? You're in that sort of twilight frequency, that otherworldly frequency, and just as you're getting ready to exit, is it the same kind of portal that brings you in that also takes you out?
Oh, I think there's many parallels to that. The near-death experiences, all those reports parallel what we're finding in the coming in. In the going out, the near-deathers talk about they review their life.
Yep.
They see their life flash before them, and they like a panoramic screen. And in the incoming experience coming in, it's previewed. It's planned and previewed. Some people tell us they remember like watching movies in heaven, probably like on some big computer screen. And they can pick. They have 4 or 5 different movies. They can pick which one they want to be in. Do they want to be in a comedy or a drama? And who do they want on the screen with them? What actors what they would like to be? Who would like to join them? People that they have some souls, other souls they have connections with and that are available. So there's that aspect. There's also the aspect of the consciousness. People remember this heavenly state of consciousness before they incarnate, beyond, where love is off the scale, and there could be some reluctance to coming in. Of course, there's also the interest in the adventure of having this human experience, and we know it's just a temporary blip in the eternity of time. So that experience, that memory of just I'm trying to remember somebody's direct quote. Anyway, just the love, the light, the peace, the joy, all that positivity just amplified way beyond what we experience in the human body. Yeah. And that parallels the journey of the soul going out, that they have that. They're stepping into that other world. And another interesting thing is, doesn't happen with everyone, but in the near-death experience, they often talk about the tunnel, and they see a light at the end of the tunnel. And in our pre-birth research, some of these folks, not everybody, not 100%, some of them remember coming down through a portal or coming down through a tunnel. Some of them remember looking down on Earth through a portal and actually seeing their parents, or given a choice of different couples that they could incarnate with and what the lives would be like with them. So, and then once they make their choice, they spiral down a tunnel to Earth.
Well, then that.
Yes, there are parallels.
That's an interesting question that Eddie had, but I have a question about the reincarnation. Is it a requirement? Or is it a choice that we make to come to this life, or lives that we, come back for maybe 10 times? Who knows? But are we choosing, or are we required to come?
Well, I think the answer to that would not be the same for everyone. Let's look at it this way. Let's make an analogy. For example, a child in kindergarten has to take, or first grade has certain courses that he has to take. He doesn't even select, I want to learn spelling and reading or drawing. Whatever the teacher gives him, he has to do in class that day. Then you have the graduate student or the PhD student, and they're designing their whole curriculum. And there's a lot more freedom and choice there. So I think we have different levels of maturity of our soul, and it's not that one is any better than the other. It's just a growing process. And as we move from that kindergarten, first grade stage up to the upper classes, we're going to have more freedom. And maybe we'll decide, I don't want to go back anymore. So that's possible. But some of those souls may need to come. I don't think anybody is forced to come. I haven't seen that they're forced. There are some that remember being reluctant and reluctantly agreed.
Okay, I'll
Yeah.
go.
I can do
So-
this.
do you find that in the case with some people who, for example, they come in and maybe there are miscarriages, or maybe there are maybe the mother or the parents have fertility issues. Do you find that reluctance could be a cause of some of those things?
That's definitely a factor. And the other thing is sometimes they're coming in as a boy and they decide they want to be a girl. Sometimes they're coming in and something's changed in the relationship between the mother and father, there's countless possible reasons that they could feel reluctant, and it could result in the miscarriage. Now, we have one story in our book where the incarnating soul actually chose and engineered a miscarriage. And I don't know if you folks had a chance to see that chapter in the book.
Wow.
It's called "I Was in Your Tummy Twice."
Oh!
Wow.
Great title.
That's great.
I was in your tummy twice. This is a little 2-3-year-old. As soon as she starts talking, she says, "Mommy, I was in your tummy twice. The first time I washed down the drain. The second time I came out like a zipper." And as she matured and had more vocabulary to express what she was remembering, she remembered that her mother had a miscarriage in the shower.
Oh.
When her mother was
Wow.
washing her hair.
Oh, wow.
She remembers falling out of her mother's body, looking up at her mother washing her hair, and going down the drain. And she actually engineered that because the parents had a big argument the night before, and she was aware of that argument, and she said it was a pregnancy that had been filled with love and light and all positivity, and then the couple argued, and she knew that if she came in as a boy, her parents would divorce. I'll let people read about why that was happening, but
Wow.
so, and she was a boy, and she wanted those
Crazy.
parents. And so she chose to leave, and she came back as a girl. And today she's in her early 30s. She remembers exactly everything. And it's all validated. That mother remembers that moment in the shower. She felt something fall out, and she looked down. She saw this white blob go down the drain. She said, "Oh, my God, it's the baby." She knew it, and she went to the doctor and confirmed it. Then when she said she came out like a zipper. What happened in the second pregnancy with the same soul is she had a C-section delivery.
That's what I was picking up on when I heard zipper.
Yeah.
Wow.
And she remembers the whole time during the womb time. She remembers different things that happened. She also remembers when the doctor cut. And she said it was like she was in a dark room, and all of a sudden somebody opened up the curtains and this bright light came in.
That's kind of cute.
Yeah, she has really cool memories, and she said she felt quite abused by how she was grabbed and handled because she was fully conscious of that.
Of
How
course.
they took her out.
Yeah.
Now, most of the people that you interview, like I said, my niece who remembered was autistic. Do you see a lot of autism, or is it pretty much every type of person that you've interviewed and talked to about this?
No, I haven't. I can't say that it's one or the other. I don't know if I have anyone that is autistic. I'm trying to think now. Most of these children are not in most cases. I can't think of anybody right now. I'd have to go back through all my files to say no. So this isn't something that we've pointed out that we have 60% autistic children. No, I can't say that. So it's not coming to me any numbers. So I would say it has not been something that we have found.
Wow.
But it can happen, and who knows what autistic children really are.
Right.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
If you're
I mean,
just
these are just labels that go ahead.
Oh, if you're just tuning in, you're listening to Truth Be Told with Tony and Eddie.
I'm Tony Sweet.
I'm Eddie Connor.
I'm Rachel Lang.
And we have with us Dr. Elizabeth Carman. She is a philosopher. She's a psychologist and also the author of Cosmic Cradle. She's here talking to us about pre-birth experiences. We want to give a big shout out really quick to our sponsors, echos.com. That's ECOS.com. And I have to ask you, as a psychologist, Dr. Carman, how much flack did you get when you first tiptoed into this wonderful world of multidimensionality?
Well, fortunately, I had let go of that whole field long before I ever tiptoed in here. I had done social work and working with minority peoples and adoption and foster care. And at that point, that was soon after I graduated from Michigan State. And after several years of that, I moved from social service to spiritual service. I realized that I wasn't going to solve any problems with the traditional methods that I was using, and that I really, through my own personal experience, was having a lot of breakthroughs in consciousness through meditation and yoga, and I sought to go into that area and to teach that. So I didn't have to worry about what anybody thought. Of course, maybe my family was disappointed. My family was very traditional, conservative, so I had a little bit of that, but I did not I was not in a university where I had to deal with that. I did end up teaching for a while in a university where everyone meditated. So you had a completely different atmosphere than what you're thinking of. Everyone was practicing a meditation, thousands of people together every day, and that's actually where I started the research and found my initial cases with these women that were having higher states of consciousness connected to childbirth.
Well, I have a controversial possible question here. I don't think of it as controversial, but I think a lot of listeners might, and I would love your take on it. I've been doing intuitive readings for over 20-some years now, and often there'll be souls that come in from the other side, deceased loved ones, often spirit guides and angels. And out of the almost 25 years of doing readings, sometimes a soul will come through that will talk about what you just described in the chapter, I Was in Your Tummy Twice. And they'll come through, and oftentimes when a parent chooses to terminate the pregnancy or an abortion, I have never once had a being come from non-physical that was the child of that parent and have anything bad to say, ever. They always talk about how it was our agreement, it was our connection. I was supposed to be there for an abbreviated amount of time. I was supposed to experience the world in your frequency for just a while, but I'm still with you today. What is your take on the souls that come in for a little while and then that the mom and the parents might choose to terminate the pregnancy? What's your philosophy on that?
Well, I would be in agreement with you. There are some. Again, this is going to depend on the people you're reading for. You've probably done readings for people that are more fully conscious.
Yes.
And it's been a more positive experience. There could be cases where the souls. I know some people have done research on it, and they talk about the souls being like castaways, and so there could have been something negative that happened in the termination. I think it's very important for, in these cases, to prevent anything negative from happening, and what you're describing is very positive, so these people were obviously on the right track. But for those that are in this situation or wondering what to do in this situation, the important thing is, again, the communication. This is a conscious being.
Right.
And I'd like to just share one story of a woman that found herself pregnant for the second time, and she was really not ready for that second child. She was kind of waiting for the first one to grow up, and her marriage wasn't completely stable. They weren't in a big enough home to bring another child in, and she also had some educational goals, and she wanted to finish some of her training. And so she she became pregnant and had a conversation with the soul. And she said she went into her backyard and sat down and closed her eyes and became very quiet and started talking and felt she was making a connection to this incoming being who she was already pregnant with, telling her that she loved her and that she would welcome her at a different time when all these other conditions, she wrote 3 conditions actually in a journal at that moment. My marriage has healed, we're more financially stable, we're in a bigger house, and I've finished my degree. The 3 different things she wrote in her journal. And after she finished writing that 3rd point in the journal, a bumblebee came. She said, believe it or not, most people are going to have a hard time believing it. A bumblebee came and walked up and down each of the 3 wishes that she had put in her journal. And she said, it was, she didn't want to really even tell anybody because she didn't want anybody to poo-poo her experience because it had been so powerful. She didn't share it with us. She miscarried the next day. And when those 3 conditions were fulfilled in about a year, she became pregnant again and then realized, oh, yes, I made that agreement, didn't I? I wrote those 3 things, and I said, when this and this and this happens, I'll get pregnant with you again. And she felt that the same soul incarnated in that pregnancy. Totally. She felt the same kind of, this is now a mother of 6 children, so she can look back and she knows the different kinds of nausea she experienced. And she says this was the same kind of physical experience that she had. And the little girl started speaking very early. She was way ahead of everybody else in her class in school, and the teacher said there's the only problem we can have with this child is boredom because she's so advanced. It was as if her soul was already 1 year ahead of itself, at least. So that's kind of interesting. So communication, I don't know if we're answering your question here, but that gives you another insight that the awareness that we are conscious beings before we're conceived or once we're in the womb, and we can have a communication. We can work it out. We can have a heart-to-heart communication and explain, right now it's not quite time. Actually, Dr. Gladys McGarry has written several books, and The Physician Within You, for example, Medicine for Millennium, that's one of them. And she worked with girls, women that really weren't ready to have a child, or circumstances weren't right. Maybe they weren't even married yet and 17 years old. And she basically counseled them to communicate like this with the incoming soul. And she had success rate with this. So this is nothing just unique to this particular person I interviewed, but this is a something that Dr. McGarry actually established through her writings and her clinical practice years ago.
Do you think that the opposite can happen? Like, for example, I work with a lot of clients who have such a strong desire to have a child. And and I always tell them, you're having this desire because you are already communicating with this soul. You're already in touch with this little baby's energy. It's, he or she is all around you. What do you think? What are your thoughts about that kind of communication?
I think you're right on, because and sometimes they don't even have the desire, but then they all of a sudden get the desire, or maybe the circumstances aren't right. I think there's communication coming in from, the other side, and that child wants to come in. So we're not, we've heard through the Greeks and Romans talked about the little Cupid.
Oh, yeah.
And the couple would fall in love. Well, and they show these little, cherubims floating with the bows and arrows. Maybe they were really talking about this Cupid factor of the child can instigate a relationship, a quick marriage, all kinds of things we have found. people that just met and all of a sudden they want to get married, and then they decide they want to have a child, and then they realize later, oh, it was coming from the other side. So that child wanted to come into those parents at that particular time, and it didn't care if they had known each other 3 months or whatever. So yes, they can have an influence.
And Dr. Carman, I have a couple of, well, first of all, I just, this past week, did a reading for a lovely lady that I've known for 20 years, and she's going to be a grandmother. And the soul of the little boy came through and was absolutely already a developed personality. I mean, very strong, very clear, like he'd been on the planet for 20 years, and was giving her all kinds of signs and little things it was going to do with its finger on her chin when it was born. Everything very, very advanced and ready to pop in. And then I have some people I read for, which made me think of this when you said it, Rachel, is I have a couple of people, moms who want to be moms, women who want to be moms, and they want it so bad, and they're looking so much at the physical proof that they don't have the baby, but they can feel the baby. I can see the twins around this one particular person, and it's so strong, but the mom, bless her heart, is having so much trouble believing that it could happen, but the babies are there wanting to come through, but the parents believe they can't have it. How do you have chapters in Cosmic Cradle that describe that kind of strong desire, but also equally strong resistance that could shield the baby from actually coming through?
Nothing's coming to my mind right now. Why are these couples resisting or feeling they can't do it? Like economically they can't support a child right now, or is that what you're getting at?
This particular lovely lady, it's way more than one. It's a fertilization things they want. The doctors are saying that the sperm count's low on one, and then something else is going on with the other couple. So it's all, quote, physical things connected to the physical body. And so they're really looking at the paperwork that the doctors say is going to be hard. And, they're believing the authority here more than their heart and soul's guidance.
And the baby communication.
Yeah.
There are a lot of obstacles today with all the pollution and toxins in our bodies. That we have to deal with and clean out, the low sperm count and all these things. It could be a sign that these couples need to do some house cleaning, or, maybe there's something they need to do on a physical level to make their body more ready. In ancient times, different cultures had all kinds of procedures for couples to prepare themselves.
Wow.
Sometimes months ahead of time to be ready for the fertilization moment.
Something, Dr. Carman, that would be a great book to write about how some of the ancient cultures did that, and maybe then we can kick Monsanto's ass.
But I think, also, if I could just piggyback on this conversation, I think, too, like facilitating the communication between the infant and the person could energetically shift the belief. And once the belief is shifted, then any kind of miracle can happen with the physical body.
Yeah. And what is a miracle? Right. It is simply a change in your perception. Ding, 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 ding.
Yeah, exactly.
There are miracle stories of conception. Where there's a will, there's a way. We have one story about a woman that had a dream, and she was told, you have radical eggs and you're going to have another baby. And she was all excited in her dream, and then when she woke up she was excited, and then she remembered, I don't have any fallopian tubes. They were taken out. I don't have any ovaries left. Well, she had different surgeries that had happened. You can read the story in the book, but what happened is she started getting pregnancy symptoms a few months later, and thought, well, what's wrong? I better go check with the doctor. What's going on with me? And he said, well, what you here for? She said, well, I feel like I'm pregnant, but I couldn't be pregnant. I don't have any ovaries or fallopian tube. He said, well, let's give you a pregnancy test just in case. And so they did, and she was pregnant and had a healthy
Wow.
baby boy.
Amazing.
Wow, that's
And
incredible.
Yeah.
Anyway, there. I think the spiritual can overcome some. I don't. Anyway, we have a whole theory about how that happened.
Oh, see, then we'll have to have you come back and
Yes.
talk about that whole theory.
Yeah.
And I have a sister-in-law who had her, back in the South, we say she had her tubes tied. And she just wanted a baby. She wanted a baby. She wanted a baby. Miss Thing had a baby with her tubes tied.
Wow.
Crazy.
Hello. Knock, knock, knock on wood.
Well, Dr. Carman, we have about
Yeah, go ahead.
No, we have about 5 minutes left, and we're talking about a lot of other subjects, but have you ever yourself experienced any remembrance of your pre-birth?
Oh, great
Ooh,
question.
that is a good question.
Yes, and I wrote about it in the first book. It's not a major story, so I don't emphasize it, but I remember as a 5-year-old child, I was at Sunday school, which
I know.
I was heavily trained in the Christian tradition, and every Sunday I was there, and church and all of that. So anyway, at that time I wasn't quite. Anyway, that's another story. Anyway, so I was there and in class, and I had to go downstairs to where the bathrooms were, and it was a big empty basement. And I'll just always remember I was walking through that basement, and the thought came into my head, or the memory, we should say, when will I be given this wonderful thing that I've been promised? I just knew that someone had promised me something that was beyond anything in this physical world. And I was just wondering, well, when's it going to happen? Like tomorrow, the next day? When's it going to come? And I didn't say anything to anybody about it. And a few years later in Sunday school again, you think I was in Sunday school all the time, but this is when it happened. The Sunday school teacher was kind of talking about a born-again experience of, having some kind of revelation. I thought, oh, that must be what my promise is. So I didn't really understand what that was until I started doing this research. And I said, my spiritual guide promised me something wonderful. When's it going to come? Well, I've had some wonderful things. So anyway, that's my little tidbit of a pre-birth memory. I'm more of a researcher and someone who likes to meditate and experience that state beyond thinking, to go to that home, that place that in our consciousness, that deep within us, and to have that experience. And so I always emphasize to people who say, well, I can't remember anything. Well, you can remember that state where you came from.
Yes.
Right.
You can have that experience beyond all of your thoughts. You have to find the proper meditation technique and transcend all of the surface thinking and experience that unboundedness, that pure soul level that's deep within you.
Well, I have to say you're very fascinating, and we definitely want you back. There's a lot more to talk about. And for the people that are listening either live or on our podcast, make sure you go to cosmiccradle.com and you can get a free chapter from the book Cosmic Cradle. All you got to do is just sign up and get on their mailing list. So make sure you go and support. And would you please come back and be with us again?
Yes, and my husband would probably like to join us if,
we would
if he's
love
in
that.
town,
That'd be great.
and he's got a lot of cool insights into all of this as well. So.
Well, perfect. Well, Dr. Elizabeth Carman, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Well, have a great week, okay?
Thank you so much.
All right. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about what we learned here today. So don't go anywhere. Truth Be Told with Tony and Eddie. I'm Tony Sweet.
I'm Eddie Connor.
I'm Rachel Lang.
And be right back.